Hello there, everyone. Welcome to Solutions, Not Just Problems. We are your hosts, Vanessa K and Be Real. Be Real, how you doing today?
Hey, everything's everything. Things are going well, got a lot of projects going on, a lot of stuff happening coming up in the month of August. Looking forward to launching a new campaign with BSM where we're going to be offering websites at $99 a month. The best deal I've had so far. And there's going to be a whole host of benefits included in that package. So, looking forward to letting our listeners know about that. If you want more information, you can simply go to brandstrategymarketing.com and you will see exactly what that package entails.
Well,
How's
I'm
things
looking
going with
forward to
you?
seeing that package.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
surprises.
Yeah. It's a lot for that price point,
Yeah.
Um, and it's not just about the website, but also there's some marketing, some tips, some opportunities to be able to have coaching or one-on-one sessions. So there's quite a bit that's included in that package. So I'm
Sounds
looking
like you're
forward to it.
expanding your services.
Yeah. I just decided that a lot of people may not be in a position to afford something upfront. But if you can offer something on a monthly basis where they know that you're not just building the website, but you're also teaching them how to utilize it so that now they can go ahead and have a lot more in terms of prospects, clients, and eventually, sales. So that's what we're
Mm,
all trying to get to as business owners.
good deal. Sounds good. Well, I'll be checking it out. I'm looking forward to hearing about your new expansions and how you're doing this and where we're going. So good deal.
How are things going with you?
Oh, pretty good. The life of a real estate agent. This morning I was on a moving truck, moving a client, physically moving them. So there's a lot of roles that we take on, but yeah,
Hey,
we're plugging along.
folks in North Carolina in the Raleigh area, check out Vanessa Kay. She's superb at what she does, willing to go the extra mile. Look at this. She just moved somebody in to a house today.
I try.
How many real estate agents are going to do that? You
Right.
know, I mean, let's be honest. Most people are like, I'm not doing that.
Right. And well, and I look at it too as, this is my livelihood, right? This is
Yep,
my passion.
yep,
And I'm not looking at it as a transaction, right? I'm hearing and feeling the pain that people have. A lot of
yes.
times moves are, there's something behind it.
Mm,
It's not just, hey, I get up today and I want to sell my
mhm,
house. So you hear a lot in the industry, and my heart just goes out because, and a lot of times I've gone through some of the situations they've gone through. So
mhm.
yeah, I'm doing what I do best, serving people.
Great deal.
So we are continuing our financial literacy series. If you've missed the previous episodes, we've been speaking on taxes and reiterating the importance of preparation and planning. We shared tips on how to prepare and some insights on planning. Just as we've prepared and planned for the tax season, we must take the same approach with planning for our future. However, with taxes, we prepare for a filing or activities that have already happened. With investments, we're preparing for an outcome that is yet to come. So this takes a bit more planning. But before we dive into today's show, we're going to take a quick break. So stick with us.
At BSM, we transform ideas into results. With high performance websites, strategic digital marketing, and intelligent business solutions, we help brands stand out and scale with confidence. Ready to elevate your brand? Let's make it happen. Visit brandstrategymarketing.com today.
We want to spend some time on setting goals. In order to grow your money correctly, you need to know your resources, the proper vehicles to use to grow your money, the optimal risk tolerance level, and investment strategies designed for you and achieve your goals. Be real. When setting goals, right, I feel it's important to know the difference between a short-term goal and a long-term goal. I know
Mhm.
that's kind of elementary, but let's go all the way back and can you explain the difference between a short-term goal and what a long-term goal is and why it's important to know the differences?
Short-term goal is typically about 1 to 5 years. It can probably go back as little as 6 months. And a long-term goal is anything above 5 years. Um, and with a short-term goal, what we're trying to accomplish is saving for vacations, emergency funds, or perhaps like a home down payment. With long-term goals, we're looking at retirement, college fund, and wealth building. So we need to have strategies for both short and long term. Okay. And it's not just something we want to have in our head. We want to write this down. We want to
Mm.
document. Okay. And when needed, you want to speak to a professional in those areas. So if you are a person who's looking to perhaps look at some of those short-term goals, one of the things I would suggest that you do is speak to a financial counselor, okay, who can sit down, look at your credit situation, look at your financial situation, and give you some information as to how you can, build moving forward over that 1 to 5 year period. Now, we're talking about retirement, college funds, wealth building, that type of thing. Obviously, you want to speak to a professional who does that for a living, and that would be someone who is a financial investor, that type of person who's certified. It can help you to grow your money. Okay, what's the purpose of investing? Obviously, is to grow the income that you have and the assets that you have so that now you're ready for retirement. And I think a lot of us, Vanessa, really don't look at retirement until we get to, unfortunately, about 50 years old. But like we talked about in the last previous podcast, it's really a good idea to start probably in your mid to late 20s, okay, and no later than 35 years old, okay? Um, and I know a lot of times as young people, we don't really think that life is going to creep up on us. But I can remember, me being in my 20s and having these conversations, and luckily I was able to prepare myself for retirement, and now, I'm in a position where, hopefully the next, 5 to 10 years, I'll be able to relax and shut it down.
5 to 10 years. We just getting started, be real.
Yeah, I don't think I'll ever fully retire. I just think that I'll be in what I call semi-retirement mode, where I have passive income coming in, and I get to the point where I'm no longer having to open up this computer unless I want to. I'll be sitting on a beach, hopefully somewhere in Destin, Florida.
And
You
I'll
know,
be calling you. B,
yeah,
we got another project to do.
but you know what? Hey, as long as as long as it's a high level, and all I have to do is just, consult, and I don't really have to get into the minutia of creating documents and creating content and having to disseminate it and having to monitor it and making sure that we're able to monetize it. As long as I don't have to do all those things, then sure, I have no problem
There's gonna be some criteria around
accepting a
that
phone
one,
call.
right?
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's because I don't think people understand. Like if you're getting into a business, right? I don't think they understand all that entails in a business. And a lot of people want to make the money, but there's so much more that goes into it. And just like we're talking about these short-term goals when it comes to personal finances, it's the same for business.
Oh yeah.
So anybody out there that's thinking about getting into business, just understand that there's a lot that goes into it, not just money, resources, but time, energy. You're going to have disappointments. So there's just so much that goes into it. So next 5 to 10 years, hopefully I'll be able to sit down and not have to deal with that on a day-to-day basis.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Work it down, working it on down, right?
Yeah.
The why approach, but bringing it back to the setting clear and achievable goals, the why approach is something that I personally like. It's a powerful tool and it can be used in so many different scenarios. It's simply asking yourself, why? Why am I opening a business? Why am I buying and selling a home? Why am I even marrying this dude, right?
Mm,
It's important to know your why because it's the why that keeps us grounded and holds us to meeting our goals. All of those scenarios I just mentioned are a process. It takes time, right? They're all accomplished over a period of time. It's that time that can gear us away, the distractions as we're going through it that can gear us away and we forget our goals. You start a business, and I guarantee you, within that year, at some point within the year, you're going to be at why asking yourself, why am I doing this? But when
mhm.
you focus, it's during those times when you go back to your why, it keeps you on track. So that why technique is a powerful one. Risk tolerance and age. Let's talk about that. The rule of thumb is the younger you are, there is less risk in investing in aggressive investment vehicles, but your contributions can be a little bit more conservative. On the other hand, if you're older, right, you want to invest in more conservative investment vehicles, right, but you can contribute more aggressively.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And we talked about that in the previous segment too. How when you're younger, you have the opportunity to take on a lot more risk to start a business, to invest in something like a Bitcoin if it's just starting out, or to get to the point where you're able to aggressively put in more money towards your 401k or 403b. There may be a stock out there like a Tesla that's where it's just starting out, and you want to, contribute some money towards uh, those type of investments. But like what Vanessa said, as you get older, obviously, you're getting closer to retirement. You want to be a little bit more conservative with that. So now you may not go into that new stock, but you might get into, let's say, the typical stocks that everybody invests in, which might be the Tesla stock. It might be Amazon. It may be Walmart, whatever the case might be. And you're looking for that steady growth, okay, that 5 to 10% that you're going to get on a regular basis. And I'm going to tell you, Vanessa, a lot of people that invest, they think they're going to double and triple their money, you
Right.
know, and that's just not the case, folks, you know. But if you understand how compound interest works, right? And let's say you invested, I don't know, $10,000 at 25 years old until you reach retirement age at 65, right? And you had a 5 to 10% return on investment. Okay. That $10,000, when you go to look at, 40 years from now, might be worth 80 grand, you know?
More
So
than
what you
that.
don't realize is that that interest is compounding. So the first year you might make $500, right? The next year you may make $700. The next year you may make $1,000. Okay. The next year you might make $2,000. So what happens is that's why a lot of investment brokers will tell you that this is a long-term gain.
Right.
Okay. It's not something that you're going to do over the short term where in 2 to 3 years you're going to see this significant return. That's simply not how investments work. Whether you're in, just like with business owners, I see business owners all the time thinking that they're going to double and triple their money. So they pay $1 for something and they want to make $2, $3 on it. No, you're probably looking at a 50% profit margin.
Right.
You might be able to make $1.50, off of that. And you might be able to keep 50 cents. And with that, you're also going to have to pay taxes and other fees, and you may have to pay to market that business and so forth. So we have to understand that when you're getting into these investments, be it some type of a stock or bond or whatever the case might be, you have to be patient and understand that you have to do it over the long term. Well, as opposed to just thinking, hey, in 2 to 3 years, I'm going to be rich. That's not going to be the
That's not
case.
going to happen. Yeah.
No.
The growth orientated assets or accounts, those vehicles are designed for building wealth over time. So it does take a minute to to build. And it's not meant to be used for short term. It's not meant to be withdraw on every other day like a savings account, or a checking account. It's for long term.
And with social media, everybody's looking for this viral moment. We're seeing the people like Mr. Beast or Shannon Sharp who got the bag off of the ability to be able to have that interview with Cat Williams, and everybody thinks they're going to capture that, you know. when that's really not the case for most of us.
Right.
Most of the time, you don't really become who you're going to be from a financial perspective until you get into your 50s and 60s.
Right. Because
And I
it
know a
takes
lot of,
time.
yeah, and I know a lot of people don't want to hear that, but most people who are wealthy are over 50 years old.
Hmm.
Okay. So for those of you that are young out there in your 20s and 30s, and I know things happen faster than what they did back in the day. Okay. So you may be able to cut some of that in half or maybe, by 25% in terms of the amount of time it's going to take you. But keep in mind, any investment, anything that you get into is going to take a minimum of 3 to 5 years for you to see any type of significant improvement or significant return on that investment.
Absolutely. It goes back to what we were talking about in one of our earlier episodes, that unwritten business process that no one sees, but it's under there, underneath, it's underlying. It will, you cannot, it's designed like that. Our business, the whole business model, is designed like that. You're not going to get rich quick. It's long term. It's
But I can tell
designed to be built over time.
Yes, but I can tell you, once you catch on, it starts to snowball and it
Hmm.
starts to take off exponentially, you
Right.
know? So now what maybe you were making 5 to 10%, now you're making 20, 30%.
Right.
Now you're starting to see more customers. The stock that you got into, it's doubled. You've got a split. You're now getting dividends. So if you play the game, the investment game, just understand that number one, it's going to take a while. And number two, in some cases, doesn't always mean that you're going to win. Okay. Sometimes you get to the point where you may have some losses as well. And that's the thing where you have that diversification. I'm not going to get into what that entails because for you to talk to a professional about that, where you have stocks, bonds, mutual funds, IRAs, 401ks, businesses, all that involved in trying to build wealth.
Well, speaking about time, now's a great time to pause for a quick break, so don't go anywhere.
All right.
Dreaming of a new beginning? Finding the perfect place or getting your home sold at the right price can feel overwhelming. Call Vanessa Kay, your local real estate expert. Understanding that buying or selling a home is a big decision, she'll guide you through every step, from finding the home suited for you or advising on how to price your home to negotiating the best deal. And it all starts with a free consultation. Why not schedule yours today? So let's talk about investment strategies. So now you've set your goal, you've identified your risk tolerance level, and you're ready to invest. Depending on your goal type, short term or long term, there are several investment strategies for each type of gold, right? Be real, can you provide our audience with some of the types of investment vehicles they can choose for both long and short term goal setting?
Okay, we're talking about short term, talking about cash or some type of savings plan. We're talking about money market funds, CDs, short-term bonds, uh, and for the most part, these are things that you could probably contact an investment broker, or in some cases, you may be able to go to your bank if you're looking at a CD and money market and savings accounts and that type of thing. So sit down with your banker and see what they offer. I have two different banks that I deal with. One is a major bank, and the other is a what do you call it? Just lost my
Credit
train of
union.
credit. There you go. The other
Credit
is
unions? Oh,
credit
yeah,
union.
they're good. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, and credit unions are able to offer you certain things that a traditional bank is not. First of all, a lot of times it's a lot more personalized. You're able to sit down with someone and kind of, maybe sit there for 30 minutes to an hour and really get an idea as to what it is that you're trying to accomplish. But also, I opened up the account a while back. I think it was like 14 years ago.
Mm.
And what I was able to do was to able to take my investment, my 403B that I had, the contribution that I was making, and roll it over into an IRA. Okay. Now, with a traditional bank, let's say like a Wells Fargo, Capital One, or maybe a Citizens Bank, which they have here in Rhode Island, you would be looking at probably rolling it into an IRA where it's indexed by the stock market. Okay.
Mm.
In other words, stocks go up, your portfolio goes up. It goes down, your portfolio goes down. That's why a lot of us, if we have a 401k, 403b, we've seen over the past few years, where there's been some volatility. However, by me opening up that account with the what was the name you said again?
Credit union?
Credit union. I cannot read for some reason I can't
People's
remember.
Bank, the credit unions.
Yeah, but opening up with the credit union, what I was able to do is to roll that 403b into an IRA that wasn't indexed by the stock market. So they gave me a flat rate, like maybe 2 to 3%, which was really conservative, but I didn't run the risk of actually losing any money as a result of it. So my
Is that considered a
portfolio,
short term though, strategy, type of vehicle, or is that more of a long term? In other words, can you liquidate it?
no, well, actually you can. You can.
Is the
And
account liquid? That's what and we'll get into that in the next slide, but shortly, we're coming up to that. But is the account liquid?
no, but I can tell you one thing that you can do if you happen to need money in emergency. If you've got about 60 days to be able to have access to that money, I'm sorry, before you have to put it back into the account. And I want to double check because this was a situation I was dealing with 14 years ago. Things change.
Hmm.
Okay, so before you do that, make sure you consult with your bank or perhaps that credit union to find out if this is still the case. So what happens is traditionally, if you take out money out of, let's say, an IRA, you're going to be penalized at 10%. Okay. Whereas if you put that money back within that 60-day time frame, let's say you needed some money to pay some bills or to get caught up on something, but you knew you could put the money back in. If you did it within that 60 days, you would avoid that 10% penalty. And it would almost be as though it never happened. So you wouldn't get anything from that credit union saying, hey, you've got to pay taxes on this income. The key is to ask questions,
Yeah.
is to know ahead of time what's happening. Because I've had people in the past that have taken money out of accounts where there was a tax penalty and they weren't even aware of it, you
Hmm.
know, or there were some fees that they had to pay and they weren't aware of it, So be careful, especially like Vanessa said, when it comes to the long term um, type of investments like stocks, index funds, mutual funds, and retirement accounts. Be careful when it comes to taking that money out and not knowing what the consequences are going to be.
Yeah. And some, most of them allow for life changes, a financial hardship or you're buying a house. They allow for that and they'll
Yes,
penalize you less,
yes,
right? But
yes.
nonetheless.
There are actually ways, and I'm glad you brought that point up. There are actually ways where you can avoid paying that 10% penalty. You're still probably going to have to pay the taxes, but if you're using it to purchase a house, I know there was a time when you're using it for educational reasons. If you had some health issues that you were dealing with, you were able to access the money without having to pay that 10% penalty. But anytime you're taking out the money, just keep in mind that it's almost guaranteed you're gonna have to pay taxes on it. Okay.
Exactly. And that leads us right into the next one, tax implications, right? You want to know the difference between a taxable account versus a tax advantage account, like a Roth IRA or for long term. So those are one of the questions you want to ask. Capital gains may come up. Now, last week we talked about capital gains, and I believe we butchered that part, right? So I did look it up this week, and it is very easy. What capital gains is? It's the profit you earn when you sell when you sell an asset, right? For example, if you buy a piece of property at 200,000, right? And then you sell it for 400,000, well, your capital gain is 200,000.
Mhm.
Taxation on capital gains begins at 250,000 for a single person and 500 for a married couple. So using the same example, if you're single and you purchased the property for 200,000 and sold it for 450, now you've made a capital gain and you're subject to taxation. Does that make sense now? I think we were fumbling over that last week.
Nah,
Where
I
does it
think,
come in? And
no, I think we kind of touched on it because I've always understood what a capital gain is. I think where we may have um, had some confusion is one of the things I talked about was basis,
yeah,
and that was how the asset can actually get to the point where it's not necessarily based on what you paid for it, but there's some things that you can do to improve it, which increases the basis. So now, that those tax ramifications may not be as significant. Okay. So, and that's a little bit much, for people to understand. But just know that anytime you sell an asset, obviously, they're going to compare that to what you paid for it or what it's worth, and that's where you have to pay the capital gains. And
that's
also
what yeah.
understand that the capital gains tax rates, okay, are actually um, lower than traditional income tax rates. Okay. So we met, and don't quote me on it, but I think President Trump is trying to get the rates down to about 15 to 20%. But in the past, it's been around 20 to 25% under the Biden administration. Okay. Because
Mm.
remember last week we talked about tax rates being anywhere from 10 to I believe 37%. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
On the personal side, whereas with if you sell a capital gains type of investment or one that where there's capital gains involved, the interest rate is a little bit lower. And it's a set amount.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to take a short break with that, and we'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. Before we close out, we're going to leave you with some tips on how to adjust and track your goals, right? Tips about goals, right? Review your goals regularly, at least at the bare minimum annually, right? Adjust for life changes, a new job, a marriage, kids, those all, or even a market shift, all of those have an impact on your goals. Rebalance your portfolio to stay aligned with your goals. So sometimes like just like that what I'm saying, a life change like having a child, right? Realign your portfolio so it takes under account that expense. Reviewing goals annually is always good as well, I like to say. I like to add to that, right? Um, we do it for our businesses. Sometimes we don't do it in our personal lives, so it's good to put that in your personal life too. There should be things that you're acquiring and trying, aspiring to get. It's always good to set goals.
I'm a goal person, Vanessa. You
Hmm.
we just talked about this when we got off just before we got started. And I was telling you how I had to really not only analyze my weekly goals, because I've got monthly goals, weekly goals, and now I've broken it down to where I have daily goals.
Hmm.
Okay, to really where I've focused in on trying to accomplish, let's say, 3 to 5 things a day. Okay, and this also can go back to, the financial goal setting, where you
Hmm.
review that on a regular basis. Yeah, once a year would be the bare minimum, like you said, but I would suggest that you probably look at it monthly, if not quarterly. You
Well,
know,
yes.
yeah, and the reason being is a lot of times, especially if you have investments out there, we're not paying attention as to how those investments are going up and down. And a while back, a lot of people lost about 20%, you know, in their portfolio. So if you're not paying attention to what's going on, and reviewing that on a regular basis, uh, you may not realize that, hey, I need to shift things out of this real estate sector over here and now put this into, this bond sector,
Hmm.
and what you might want to do, especially if you have like a 403B, 401k, or some of these other investments, stocks, bonds, whatever the case might be, is sit down periodically with that investment broker and make sure that you're aligned with what's happening in the market. You know, so if we're talking about being able to monitor or take a look at our income and expenses, we're also looking to do the same thing on the investment side as well.
And remember to prioritize your goals, right? So, and it looks like an emergency fund, like emergency fund before vacation, retirement before that luxury car, prioritize your goals. It's always good to write them down because then you can really see it. It jumps out at you, but
Mhm.
prioritize your goals. Some of you may ask, how much do we set aside? We can't really tell you that, right? This is determined on your goals and also your current situation. So if you take all of these tips that we've given you and combined them, you should be able to determine your goals and determine how much to put aside for your goals.
Mhm. I can tell you this, that I used to sit down with clients and we didn't so much get into the investment side. But when it came to savings, when it came to education, or an education fund for the kids, or insurance and things of that nature, we'd probably say somewhere around 20 to 30%, you know, of your disposable income should be put into those areas, into savings, into the college fund, into your 401k, 403b. So if you could do somewhere around 20%, I think that would be adequate if you had a mixture of investment, savings, and just making sure that, you now have a set amount that you're having go into those accounts. And you can have that deducted, if you're an employee, you can have that deducted from your paycheck, or you can have the money go into your savings account so you don't even have to worry about it, and that's what we would suggest to clients is get to the point where you have a specific amount of money going into savings, specific amount that's going into checking, this amount that's automatically being deducted and going into, let's say, your 401k or 403b. So all of this would already be set up ahead of time, So let's say, for example, 5% went into your 401k, 10% went into savings. Then you had another 5% that went into one of those the investment plan that we were talking about for your kids' education. Okay,
Oh
that would
yeah,
be right there.
they better go to school too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, before we go, we're going to leave you with some tools and some resources. We're not going to go through them all for the sake of time, but we will put them in our description box. We're going to leave you with some budgeting apps, their prices, robo advisors, some financial planners that you can look into. So before we go, we want to leave you with a tip, right? Or just something to know. It's know that this requires emotional discipline, right? Understand that a lot of these vehicles are tied to the market, and the market fluctuates. So don't let your emotions drive your decisions. The market's going to go up and down, and these vehicles are going to go up and down, right? Just stay committed to your long-term goals, especially during the downturns. During those downturns, remember your why. Go back to your why, and just hang in there. It doesn't mean downturns don't mean that we bail out. It just means that we may need to become more educated. But don't let your emotions, because it is going to tap into your emotions. When you see that, those stocks tank or whatever, just know that it over time, it comes back, it corrects itself. And these tools are to be used for long-term goals. So stick with your commitments, stick with your goals.
Mhm.
Anything else you want to add to this, B Real?
No, what do we have on tap for next week? What are we looking at?
Next week, we are looking at investing your money. We'll be discussing budgeting and savings for your investment portfolio.
Okay, cool.
So this wraps up today's show. We want to thank everyone for watching. You won't want to miss next week. Like I said, we'll be discussing budgeting and saving for your investment portfolio. This is Vanessa K and Be Real signing off. And remember, keep growing, stay motivated, and thanks for tuning in.
Peace.